Well, in 2024, we had Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors, Ladd McConkey, all finished top 13 overall. Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. were top 6 overall. In 2023, we had Puka Nacua as a top 5 rookie wide receiver, top 5 wide receiver as a rookie. Last year, not quite as good. Tetairoa McMillan did finish 15th overall, 23rd per game. Emeka Egbuka had a strong season, but obviously finished poorly and finished wide receiver 36 per game. But there's a lot of talent here and a lot of reason to be optimistic. And we're going to, I think we're going to be pretty optimistic on today's show. Welcome, everybody. It is Thursday, February 26th. We're looking at the sophomore wide receivers. And we've got some sophomore wide receiver trivia. And Heath, you're allowed to play today because I didn't send you the answers.
Oh, good.
You ready to, you going to win? You think you're going to win?
I don't know.
All right, let's see. Sophomore wide receiver trivia, minimum 25 targets for some of these stats.
25 targets. So they had at least 1.5 targets per game.
Well, yeah, I mean, for some of these stats. But this one is irrelevant in terms of that minimum. Who had the most targets?
Tetairoa McMillan.
I'll say Egbuka.
Oh, good job, Dave. Get after Heath took McMillan off the board. Dave gets the first one right. Egbuka had 127 targets, led the position. McMillan had 122. Who had the highest targets per route run rate?
Is that Burden?
I got to give it to Dave. He got in there just ahead of Jamie. Yeah, it's Luther Burden. What was Emeka Egbuka's target share in his last 4 games, which were the only 4 games he played with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin healthy? Emeka Egbuka's target share in those 4 games, closest wins.
A 7%. Dead branch from a tree.
What'd you say, Heath?
17%.
12%. 12%. Jamie wins. It was 13.8%. Yikes. Jalen Lane had the highest drop rate among rookies at 9.7%. Who had the second highest drop rate at 8.3%?
Tet?
No. Close. He was bad, though.
Egbuka.
Also bad, but not quite as bad as Luther Burden. Luther Burden, Tetairoa McMillan, and Emeka Egbuka all need to work on their dropsies. And finally, which rookie wide receiver tied Tetairoa McMillan and Emeka Egbuka for the most end zone targets with 11? This one is impossible. It's unbelievable that he had 11 because he only had, let's see how many. Let me tell you how many targets this guy had for the year. He had 27 targets for the year, and 11 of them were in the end zone.
Oh, man. What conference?
NFC North.
Oh, Isaac Tesla.
Yes. Insane stat right there. Isaac Tesla. And there you go. Dave, I think, wins the trivia contest.
Congratulations, Dave.
Way to go, Dave.
I feel amazing.
Heath, I'll give you the answers next time.
Thank you.
All right, we got a lot of other podcasts. Go to CBS.
Makes me think that you give Heath the answers all the time since he always wins.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. We need some transparency on this show. Go to cbssports.com/podcasts. Check out all of our shows. Eye on College Basketball. Good time to be listening to that one. Inside College Basketball Now. With the first pick, the early edge, pushing the pile. Fantasy Baseball Today. Fantasy Football Today Dynasty. Beyond the Box Score. Cover 3, attacking third, call it what you want, kicking it, and more. CBSSports.com/podcasts.
All right, trivia question for you now, Adam.
All right, let's do it.
Which of those podcasts is Ryan Wilson on?
Who's Ryan Wilson again? Well, Ryan Wilson's going to be buzzing now that the Jets and Titans have made a trade. We'll talk about that in a second. Just some quick news and notes. ESPN reporting that teams are monitoring the trade market for Brian Thomas Jr. Todd Monken, the new head coach of the Browns, says that the Browns will have an open competition at quarterback. And here's the Jets trade. They have traded defensive end Jermaine Johnson to the Titans for defensive tackle Tavondre Sweat. Jamie, what do you make of that?
I believe Robert Saleh was on the Jets staff when they drafted Jermaine Johnson. So that's a reunion of getting a guy that I'm sure he likes and hopefully improves the pass rush for the Titans, and listen, they have one of the best defensive linemen already, Simmons. Sounds like there's a plane flying over Dave's head.
So it sounded like.
I mean, the Jets are, I think, opening up a spot to go get a premier pass rusher in the NFL draft at the number 2 overall pick. So that probably is a precursor to the next move for them. But hopefully it works out well for both, and the Jets can improve their run defense.
Yeah, so the Jets get the defensive tackle T'Vondre Sweat. The Titans get the defensive end Jermaine Johnson. And the Jets have the 2nd pick, and the Titans have the 4th pick. All right, here we go. Sophomore.
What I sent you?
Oh, wait, what was that again?
Kind of relevant to what we talked about yesterday.
Okay. Raiders head coach Clint Kubiak says that they want a 2-man show at running back. Wants to have a wingman for Ashton Genty. Well, Jamie, you sent it to me, so I'll let you talk about it first.
Well, I mean, it's just, it makes sense, to, take some pressure off of Genty. We hate it because we want to see Genty get the same amount of work that he got as a rookie, which helped allow him to still be a very solid fantasy option, just not the guy that we were drafting. It's just going to come down to who it is. Is it going to be somebody of prominence? Is it going to be a rookie that they work in? We've heard these stories and seen this from teams time and time again where they want to take pressure off of the lead running back, and then the lead running back is just too good and they can't take him off the field. So Kubiak is obviously coming from a system that had a lot of success with 2 running backs and Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet, and so you don't want to see those. You don't want to see Genty in that type of situation where he's either losing touchdowns or losing passing down work, because he can obviously do both of those and have a lot of success doing that, especially if the Raiders, as we talked about yesterday, get better across the board, quarterback, coaching staff, and obviously offensive line. So we'll just have to see what that spot is. If it's somebody that like a Tyler Algier, for example, do they go and sign someone that's going to maybe be a touchdown vulture type of player like Charbonnet was? Is it going to be a Kenneth Gainwell type, like a pass catching guy? Is it going to be just again, a day 2, day 3 rookie that they just, try and develop and, give some opportunities just to take, Genty off the field for a few snaps? So it's going to, TBD right now, but I think it's not ideal that we're hearing Kubiak say that already.
Just looking at the history, because I tweeted this out this morning, Clint Kubiak, he's been an offensive coordinator 3 years. 2021, Dalvin Cook averaged 21.8 touches per game. 2024, Alvin Kamara averaged 21.1 touches per game. And then last year it was Ken Walker at 15.2. So it could be that he had a major change of heart before the 2025 season. It could be he just had a more balanced backfield last year, and so they split it up more. The other thing is, like, Genty averaged 18.8 touches per game last year on a team that ran fewer plays than anybody else in the NFL. If they're going to run a league average number of plays, they were going to have somebody else have more touches, because he's not going to touch the ball 24 times a game.
Right. This isn't the end of the world for Genty whatsoever. It just
depending on who they sign.
Right. If it's somebody who's got a lot of pop and could end up being in a 50-50 split, gosh, that would be terrible. Even if it's something close to what he had in Seattle last year. I think the reason why Kenneth Walker didn't have the same type of work as what you said, Heath, Kamara in 2024, Dalvin Cook in 2021, they had 2 running backs that they really liked, and they wanted to try and preserve Kenneth Walker. I don't know if he's going to feel exactly that same way about Ashton Genty, but it does depend on who the second guy even is.
And Heath, did that number for Walker include the playoffs?
No.
Right. So that number would be way higher if you included the playoffs.
Yeah.
But you gotta Azer stat the games that Charbonnet didn't play at the end of the
year.
you
have to does the Azer stat include the playoffs?
Well, you wouldn't have to include the playoffs because Charbonnet didn't play.
Charbonnet only missed 1 game in the regular season.
Oh, right. He got hurt in the playoffs. Okay, never mind. So you can keep it. I mean, if you wanted to, you could get rid of week 3, Heath, but I'll allow it. It's fine. Now, it's a good stat, a good perspective there.
What if unfortunately, Walker follows Kubiak to Vegas?
Oh, that'd be such a mistake.
That's the other side of this thing is, like, I don't know if any team has as many holes as the Raiders do.
Cleveland.
So if they do designate significant resources,
right, Cleveland.
Cleveland at least has a good defense.
Yes, but they've got almost nothing on offense.
Yeah. Well,
no offense, Jerry Jeudy, Isaiah Bond.
This team stinks.
Sanders.
All right, ready to get into the sophomores? Let's do it. Sophomore wide receivers, rank your top 3. Heath, Dave, Jamie.
Specifically for 2025 or 2026?
Yeah,
I'll go Tetairoa, McMillan, Emeka, Egbuka, Luther Burton.
Same
as of now, but Egbuka may move up to the top of the list depending on what Tampa Bay's receiving core looks like.
Okay, so let's discuss that. Tetairoa, McMillan, Emeka, Egbuka, Luther Burton. Everybody's got it in that order. So Jamie, what would be the scenario in which Egbuka would jump ahead of McMillan?
Mike Evans gone for sure, and potentially Chris Godwin as well.
Dave, how about you? What would be the scenario in which Emeka, Egbuka would leapfrog Tetairoa, McMillan?
So what's the scenario? What if the Panthers improve their run game and add another wide receiver with a day 2 pick? I think that would be something that would hurt Tetairoa, McMillan's opportunities. And Emeka, Egbuka, same thing. Like if Evans is gone, that should keep Egbuka ascending.
Heath, do you see any scenario in which you would move Egbuka ahead of McMillan?
Well, sure. I mean, we got a whole offseason worth of moves. So, but I think they pretty well covered it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I gave that stat about Egbuka having a 13.8% target share in the last 4 games of the year with Evans, Godwin, and Jalen McMillan, for what it's worth, all healthy. And that's obviously concerning. And not only that, he just didn't play that much. His snap share went way down. This guy was playing over 80% of the snaps every week. It was like 2/3 of the snaps when all those guys were healthy. That's Emeka, Egbuka. But I'm going to give you a stat about Tetairoa, McMillan that you need to know as well. And I'm going to do that after we take this little break on Fantasy Football Today. We will be right back.
This is why we do this every March.
Major slam! It is a basketball party. It's March! Expect the unexpected!
Yeah, Emeka, Egbuka was not the only wide receiver in this class that saw a lower target share down the stretch. In Tetairoa McMillan's last 5 games, he was actually only on pace for 88 targets. Carolina averaged 27 pass attempts per game. They got super run heavy. It's not they weren't like allowing fewer points or anything like that. They allowed basically the same amount of points as they were allowing in the first 12 games of the year. But in the last 5 games of the year, a 21.3% target share for McMillan. Much better than the stat I gave about Egbuka, 13.8% with everybody healthy. But you did see Jalen Coker start to get more involved. Jalen Coker had a 19.7% target share in the last 5 games of the season. And then in the one playoff game, 12 targets for Coker, 7 targets for Tetairoa McMillan. So to sum it up, McMillan was on pace for 136 targets in his first 12 games, 88 targets in his last 5 games. His target share went way down, probably because of Jalen Coker, but also the pass attempts went way down for Carolina. So yeah, just something to keep in mind there. And it wasn't really a standout season for McMillan. He had one huge game, 33 fantasy points at Atlanta in week 11. And he had 3 other games with 16 or more points, but he struggled. I wonder if his career is going to look like Garrett Wilson's and Chris Olave's, basically, being held back by pretty bad quarterback play, I guess I'd say. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but yeah, let's break down Tetairoa McMillan a little bit here, Heath, and he had a pretty similar season overall to the rookie years of Olave and Garrett Wilson. So I see some parallels there.
Yeah, I mean, there's quarterback concerns, there's pass volume concerns, but I think even so, and yeah, he played 17 games, so he doesn't quite fit the typical 16 metric, but 17 games, he gets 1,000 yards, he scores 7 touchdowns. The history of guys that have done that in their rookie year is mostly positive. So I think you're going to get a top 30 wide receiver. The hope is that he becomes a top 20 wide receiver.
I think he's probably going to be drafted that way, I guess.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, Dave, I think you can make the case Egbuka is going to have the offense behind, right? Where the Bucs offense wasn't that much better than the Panthers offense. Panthers finished, I think, 27th in scoring, and the Bucs were about 20th in scoring, but they're capable of so much more. So if you wanted to make the case for Egbuka over McMillan, you could say, well, he's going to be on a better offense. And again, he had more targets than McMillan last year. So what are your thoughts there, Dave?
It could absolutely happen. And I would ask people to focus on the best parts of the Bucs offense, which were their first 5 games. And then we talked about it before, just tons of injuries. Egbuka himself got hurt. He had a hamstring injury. At first, it was talk that he was going to miss some time, and then he ended up playing through it. I don't think that helped him at all. Baker wasn't Baker. The offensive line wasn't very good. I'd like to know where Tampa's offense was those first 5 weeks in terms of scoring, because I think they were pretty dang good. And Egbuka certainly benefited from that and was getting a ton of targets per game, a few more per game than what McMillan averaged over the course of the season. But I can't sit here and say that Carolina's offense is dead in the water. They've got potential to be better too. They've got to continue to protect Bryce Young. I thought when Young had time, he would make some excellent throws. And we could say that about a ton of quarterbacks in this league. McMillan just has to still see a ton of targets per game, stop dropping the ball all over the place. 7 drops were terrible last year. His catch rate was 57%, Adam. That was 25th out of 28 wide receivers that saw 100 targets last year. He's got to get better at just simply catching the ball. He's a great talent. And so it's going to come down to which of those 2 receivers are going to continue to have a big role in their offense and which offense will stay healthy / take the next step in 2026.
Yeah, but what you said about McMillan, he had a higher catch rate than Egbuka. Egbuka had a 50% catch rate, and Egbuka had a higher drop rate. Like I said, all 3 of these guys that you guys ranked as your top 3 sophomores, which has to be the case here, of McMillan, Egbuka, Burden, all 3 of them had issues with drops, and not just total drops, but drop rate. So they got to fix that for sure.
Jamie,
yeah,
how many drops Egbuka had after the injury? I wonder if I really think the injury impacted him quite a bit.
The first 5 games of the year, the Bucs were 9th in scoring, and he was amazing. Egbuka was the number 3 wide receiver per game. In the last 12 games, he was the number 58 wide receiver per game.
Yeah, it was terrible.
It's not all the injury. The injury happened, I don't know, week 9-ish, something like that.
No,
Jamie,
and he definitely had some drops in those first. He had 3 drops in his first 4 games, and 2 of them were on short throws.
Jamie, I've got a theory about what went wrong for Egbuka, but what do you make of the splits? First 5 games, he averaged over 20 fantasy points per game. Last 12 games, he averaged less than 8 fantasy points per game.
Well, I mean, it was the receivers getting healthy for Tampa Bay. I think that's the biggest thing, So, Dave's right. He obviously tried to play through the hamstring injury. Baker tried to play through the shoulder injury. Offensive line was banged up, but you're just putting talented players that have a history with the Bucs, with Baker Mayfield, and obviously it's tough for a lot of young players. When they're getting to the end of their season, playing from more games and hitting that rookie wall potentially. I think the hardest thing for Egbuka is just really going to be personnel. If the Bucs lose 1 or 2 guys, then it's an easy path to success for him, because that's what was so successful for him early in the season, with Godwin trying to come back from the ankle injury and obviously Evans not being there. That was huge. When everybody was healthy and Baker was leaning on his guys, it was difficult. You might be able to make an argument that if Evans and Godwin are still there, assuming McMillan is still there also, and DJ Moore leaves Chicago, Luther Burden is probably in a better spot than Emeka Egbuka. I don't think they'll get drafted that way. But, if Burden is kind of set free, if the burden is relieved from Burden, then there's an easier path to success for him than there would be for Emeka Egbuka.
Now, all right. So you're saying the guy's getting healthy, but it was only those last 4 games where everyone was healthy. So Egbuka had he had these great first 5 games. Then he had.
But if you just take it in segments, factoring everything we just said, nobody there in the beginning of the season.
No, Evans was there in the beginning.
Evans was there for 3 of the first 5. Godwin was not.
Okay, so not everybody there for the first part of the season. Then you have the injury to both Egbuka and Mayfield, and then you have everybody fully healthy. So it's like you segment it, and it's easy to sort of see what happened.
All right, but he had Evans in weeks 1 through 3. He had Godwin in weeks 4 and 5. So he had one of them in all 5 of those games, and he was the number 3 wide receiver per game, averaging 20.5 fantasy points per game. Then he gets an 8-game stretch. Now, this is the perplexing part to me. An 8-game stretch before these last 4 games where Egbuka's target share plummets. 8-game stretch where he is on pace for 153 targets. He's getting 9 targets per game, and he's turning that into a pace of 62 catches, 767 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And every week it was like, do we start him? He's getting targets. Evans is out or Godwin is out, and he just was not producing the, what was it, yards per target?
It was again
yards per target.
Him not healthy fully, Baker not healthy fully. 8-game sample size of what he does and what he doesn't do, and how to defend that. Those things all come into play.
I mean, I guess these are just the stats. He had this opportunity, it didn't work. I want to show some screenshots if we can, because I think the biggest thing was the deep balls. In the first 5 games of the year, he was making big play after big play, and then after that, let me show you some screenshots. This is like second half of the year, pass attempts with 20 or more air yards. See how he's open. I got him circled. This was an incompletion. For those of you who are just listening, I'm showing screenshots of Emeka Egbuka getting open downfield and Baker Mayfield either missing him or Egbuka dropping it. So this is what week? This is the Lions game. This is like week 10 or something.
So Baker's already injured at this point.
Sure. Yes. This is week 7. Week 7. All right. He's open here.
Well, this is the game Baker got hurt, right?
This is the game Evans got hurt. I don't know if Baker got hurt in this game. I don't remember. Here he is. This should have been a touchdown. He destroys this defensive back against the Saints. This is week 8. Incomplete pass. Here he is against the Rams. I remember this one. This, I think, was a Thursday night, maybe, or Monday night, or a Sunday. Maybe a Sunday night.
Sunday night.
He's got 2 or 3 steps against the Rams cornerback here in week 12. Incomplete pass. And this one we probably all remember. He abuses this Saints defensive back. This was in week 14. Baker makes a good throw here, and he dropped it. Egbuka dropped it. We couldn't believe it. But I think that was the thing that really stood out to me. In his first 5 games, 8 catches, 291 yards, 4 touchdowns on 13 targets of 20 or more air yards. Last 12 games, 2 catches for 71 yards, no touchdowns on 14 targets of 20 more air yards. So I don't know, Heath, I look at that as, man, there were some opportunities that Baker missed him on or he dropped, but also he was pretty big play dependent, so it's good and bad. I also remember making the same exact case and showing the same types of screenshots for Xavier Worthy last year, and it didn't work out in year 2. So what do you make of the deep ball splits for Egbuka?
I think deep ball splits are inherently wacky, and you're going, like, if you're being targeted well downfield on a regular basis, you're going to have some hot and cold stretches because those are not consistent targets. And he had a 12.18 off for the season. That's probably a little bit high for a guy that's going to be a high volume guy. I kind of expected him to be more of a short area target when he was coming into the league.
Yeah.
So I think some of that, listen, the biggest thing I think is which Baker Mayfield do we get? Right. Do we get the guy? I mean, he's had basically 2 years, like the end of 2023, all of 24, and the start of 2025, where he looked like a great quarterback. He's had lots of stretches in his career, including the second half of last year, where he really did not. Right. His off-target rate ballooned in the second half of the season. Maybe that was all injury related. Maybe it was a little bit of Baker Mayfield inconsistency. But if Baker's back to being an elite quarterback next year and Mike Evans is somewhere else, then Egbuka absolutely has the chance to be better than Tetairoa McMillan and maybe even be a top 12 wide receiver. But there's ifs involved that we're just not going to know.
There's a comment here from Big Farts. I always love reading that name. Emeka Egbuka is always wide open. Well, ESPN's analytics had him 104th out of 110 wide receivers in open score. He was toward the bottom of that all year, and people were just always questioning that. It did seem like this guy knew how to get open. I don't really understand that score, but that's what it is. All right, so those are McMillan and Egbuka. Let's talk about Luther Burden, Jamie. And you said, there's a scenario where Luther Burden could be approaching these guys in ADP, and he had one of the best yards per route run of any rookie wide receiver probably ever. I only looked at the past 12 or 13 years. He didn't have that many targets though. Man, I went back and I watched tape today, and he's so fun. Just makes guys miss incredibly well. What are your thoughts on Luther Burden and his potential?
Huge potential. I mean, we saw it at the end of the season when Rome Odunze was out and he was getting those opportunities. He was getting those targets. Caleb Williams was leaning on and Ben Johnson was featuring him. And that's the hope that what we see in his second season in 2026. Obviously, that's tough to count on if Moore is still there, because they'll mix and match all three of those guys, assuming they're healthy. But I think you just look at what the upside and the potential is in this offense. And, we were all sort of trying to figure out at the beginning of the season last year, who's going to be the Amon-Ra St. Brown for Ben Johnson. And there really wasn't one guy that materialized. You can maybe make the argument that we saw that from Burden toward the end of the season when he got this chance or got those chances. I just think that if everybody's there, it's almost as bad as what we're talking about for Egbuka in Tampa Bay, maybe worse, just because of Loveland and what he's potentially capable of doing with 10-plus targets in his final 4 games, including the playoffs. Odunze, what he did at the beginning of the season, and DJ Moore will still kind of probably live in that 5 to 7 target range, which would clearly limit what Burden's potential could be. So if you're factoring in and projecting a big leap for Caleb Williams, and maybe they do finally cross the 4,000-yard threshold for the first time ever, and maybe get even better than that, then everybody could be successful. But if we kind of live in that right around 4,000-yard range and spectrum, then I think it's hard for, Burden to have that breakout potential that we saw barring an injury. So I think you probably treat him as a number 3 receiver coming into the year. Assuming DJ Moore is gone, then he probably cracks the top 24.
For some perspective here, the Bears, they did not reach 4,000. They were at 3,991 yards. So let's just say 4,000 yards. That was 12th best in the NFL. It's not a standout number, but it's pretty good. It's not that different than the team that was 17th best, Denver. Denver averaged 3 fewer yards per game than Chicago passing. All right. Does Burden have the widest range of outcomes of those 3 receivers, McMillan, Egbuka, Burden?
Yeah, I think that that was pretty much the way we felt going into the NFL draft last year, that the upside is immense and the floor was lower. And I think the floor probably moved up just a little bit with what we saw from Burden last year and his progress in the Ben Johnson system. I don't think we saw anything to lower our ceiling feeling about Luther Burden. He could be the number 1 wide receiver for Ben Johnson's offense this year. It's really difficult, I think, to kind of sort things out between him and Rome Odunze because of the early part of the year when Burden wasn't playing that much and the late part of the year when Odunze was out with an injury. But Burden still has that upside, be the number 1 wide receiver on his own team, and I think has more upside in terms of efficiency than McMillan or Egbuka do in this current situation, just because of Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams.
Anything you want to say about Luther Burden, Dave, before we move on?
He had 7 games, including the postseason, where he had a route rate of 50% or more. That's a low bar. He had 11 or more PPR points in just 2 of those games. I think the key here, and he really touched on it, the efficiency spiking, that's going to come if he plays more. If we watch this offseason unfold, and it makes it crystal clear, Chicago makes it crystal clear that Luther Burden's going to have way more routes to run. He's just going to play a lot more. Then all the other great numbers will follow. And you compared him to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Those 4 games without Rome Odunze, his ADOT actually fell to 8.1 yards. So he was a shorter area target. He had a higher catch rate in those games. And we are talking way higher in those games compared to the 2 playoff games that he had. He was just way, way better. I think that's part of the role that he should absolutely have in Chicago, along with some deep shots mixed in. And if that's what they do and there's fewer mouths to feed, then by all means, Luther Burden can hit that huge upside.
And he left one of those 4 games early. He had 6 catches for 84 yards against Cleveland in a half. He had 26% target share in that game, and he only played a half. So in 3 of the 4 games without Odunze, Luther Burden had a target share of 21.4% or higher. It was really encouraging stuff. He just never played that much. I always make the comparison to Jaden Reed, a guy who was like super efficient, really good, but couldn't get on the field enough to be a consistent fantasy contributor. And I hope that's not the case with Luther Burden. I think that guy needs to get on the field more.
I don't think we know what the Bears really look like because we didn't see that for an entire stretch of everybody playing at their best healthy level. Loveland had the shoulder injury early in the season. Odunze had the foot injury late in the season. Again, we'll see what they do with DJ Moore. But if everybody's back, then it's a little tougher. I do think, though, just your question to Heath, I still think Egbuka's range of outcomes is a little bit different, a little bit higher or wider. I don't know.
Yes.
Okay.
I think his ceiling is higher.
Well, I just think we saw how bad it was for Egbuka when everybody was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, but I don't know if that's necessarily a fair representation of who Egbuka is. Or
No,
who's-
agreed. I just think like
I don't know if we really know for sure.
if Evans is gone, we're all going to be excited about Egbuka. If Evans and Godwin are potentially gone, we're going to love Egbuka more than we probably should. But I think in terms of if DJ Moore is gone, there'll probably be realistic expectations for Burden, which will probably put him. My guess would be as high as like wide receiver 20.
Is there anybody here that doesn't have a high ceiling for any of these top 3 wide receivers? I think they all have high. I think they could all finish potentially top 12 at the position.
But I think it's harder.
Everything
to see
goes
that, though,
right
if,
for them.
It's harder to see that though if Tampa and Chicago bring back the same cast.
Right. It's harder for them to hit that. That's fair.
Yeah, and I think
mean it's not there, though.
especially for Burden, because like his supporting cast is young, right? You know, Evans could just be kind of on his way out, but
Right.
like Loveland and Odunze, if they bring back DJ, obviously if they bring back DJ Moore, it's a problem. But if they don't, then I don't know that he has top 12 potential because he only had 1 end zone target. That's the other thing. I know that, you know, he didn't have that many targets to begin with, but that was not a guy they were looking for in the red zone, in the green zone, in the end zone, Luther Burden. I don't know that he's going to profile that way either. So I don't know. A lot of things to consider here and a lot of moving parts. And a lot of time before we're done with the show. We got a lot more to talk about. We got to take a break. So we'll be right back. We'll talk about Travis Hunter, Matthew Golden, Jaden Higgins, Jack Besh, and more after this.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
Okay, which sophomore wide receivers will be overdrafted, Heath?
Overdrafted. I think most likely, Burden's probably most likely.
Dave?
I think Burden's the easy answer.
Jamie?
Egbuka or Burden, depending on what personnel we see.
Okay, I'll ask you a question I asked about the sophomore running backs. Are you concerned about any of these guys just being a complete bust? You know, not necessarily just in fantasy, but in the NFL. Who could be that complete bust?
Matthew Golden.
Yeah,
Golden's a good answer.
Yeah.
I'm a little scared that McMillan could be that guy.
Really?
Yeah. Just because of where he landed. And if that offense doesn't gravitate to throwing him the ball a ton, I think he just needs volume for sure.
But that would be like a Garrett Wilson kind of bust, not a.
I'm thinking worse than Garrett Wilson kind of bust, but yeah, along those lines. I mean, you touched on it. He had the kind of year as a rookie that Garrett Wilson had as a rookie, and Garrett Wilson has shown flashes since the rookie year, but
he hasn't been a bust.
No, but he's been held back by his.
Like the question was a
question, and so
bust.
that could be the same type of thing for Tetairoa, is that he's just not in the right environment for him. Like if he had gone to the Rams, holy moly, he'd be amazing right now. We'd be going crazy for him, but he's not, and I don't know if he'll ever be. And it's going to take Carolina really making an effort to get him to make him a big time focus of the passing game, which they didn't always do last year.
Well, as a wide receiver, I think I'm a little worried about Travis Hunter.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's probably the right answer.
Also, Jaden Higgins, if we just look at guys who were taken in the first 2 rounds, round 1 was Hunter, McMillan, Egbuka, Golden. Round 2 was Jaden Higgins, Luther Burden. Jaden Higgins was the 34th pick in the draft.
Yeah.
That's pretty big capital. Luther Burden, Trey Harris, and Jack Besh. So Higgins, Harris, and Besh did very little as rookies. Are they worth drafting, Jamie? Jaden Higgins for Houston, Trey Harris for the Chargers, Jack Besh for the Raiders.
Absolutely. I mean, you got double-digit rounds at best, at least as of now. But Higgins should be the number 2 receiver for Houston opposite Nico Collins. Besh should be in a more prominent role for the Raiders, depending on what their receiving core looks like. And Trey Harris, assuming Keenan Allen's not brought back, should step into the number 3 receiver role there for the Chargers, depending on what else they do from a personnel standpoint. But right now you're finding a consistent path to easy targets, or hard path to consistent targets, whatever you want to phrase it. I think the one that you can maybe be the most encouraged by, at least as now for me, would be Higgins, just because we saw some big play potential for him. He should, get an opportunity to play a lot more, especially if they move on from Christian Kirk. So there's starting opportunity. There's, still some, I think, decent pass volume there. I don't think CJ Stroud's a complete bust yet. Despite the rumors of them maybe trying to trade him, I don't think that's realistic. So if Stroud can get back to, being a little bit better as a passer, get some more protection up front, I think there's a chance for Jaden Higgins to, be a borderline number 3 receiver. I don't think anybody's going to view these guys as, top 24 caliber fantasy options.
Heath, let's talk about, let's talk about Travis Hunter and how you view his dynasty value.
He's a wide receiver 3 with immense upside and 0 floor. And you really hope that Brian Thomas Jr. gets traded this offseason.
Yeah, it's hard to love Travis Hunter's prospects for 2026, but at some point I wonder if they're going to make him a wide receiver again, or how much of he was emerging potentially as the number 1 guy. He had a huge game against the Rams in Europe, and then
they decided after that game to get him more involved in the offense. They really had designs on him being a huge part of their offense, and he got hurt. And so it never came to fruition. So not only do you have to contend with how he does coming back from a serious injury, but also where do the Jaguars put him on the team? Is he going to be a cornerback all the time and a receiver some of the time? We didn't really have that same type of concern as a rookie because we thought that he'd play a lot as a wide receiver. And he did, and that was where he was going to go. But now everything's kind of changed for him, and it makes him, he said it best, like there's really no way to feel good about him for fantasy purposes in 2026 because we don't know how much receiver he'll play.
You guys,
if they stand pat with Brian Thomas, it just makes so much more sense for their franchise to put him on defense.
Yeah. And they could always change back in 27 or 28.
Right.
Like they'll have that flexibility if they want to.
I don't think he's ever leaving one side of the field permanently. So whatever he plays predominantly, the other side, he'll still get snaps and get opportunities. It's a matter of, like, when you just look at it with the trade for Jacoby Myers and the emergence of Parker Washington, they don't really need him offensively.
Right.
I think defensively they need him more because of what he can do for them on that side of the ball. So again, it's a matter of, how they finalize their personnel. It just, for our purposes, it's unfortunate because if he was a full-time wide receiver, looking at that game, looking at what he was building toward and what we know he's capable of doing, like, there's so much upside, but it's now a very crowded receiving core. And if he's not going to be a full-time player there, like, when do you feel comfortable taking a chance on him? That's the toughest part. You have to make a call on for how we rank him, and certainly when you draft him.
Any sleepers in this sophomore class?
There's a bunch. I mean, Trey Harris, I think, has got a huge opportunity, and maybe not fully in 2026, but you could see a better offense in general, certainly with the tackles there. I'm really excited about Torrey Horton's upside. I think we saw, he played 8 games. He scored 4 touchdowns in those 8 games before he got hurt. Rashid Shaheed's a free agent. Cooper Kupp is 33, or will be 33 by the summer. That's a great scenario if he can be the number 2 receiver there opposite JSN. Kyle Williams can take a step forward for New England. That's another guy that can make plays down the field with, we keep saying, hey, go get, Alec Pierce or trade for this guy and that guy. Like, maybe Kyle Williams gets a, bigger opportunity and he takes advantage of it. And then Jack Bech, I liked him coming into the NFL. I thought, it was a good landing spot for him with the Raiders. It didn't materialize, but now you have a new offense. You have a, hopefully a more creative play caller and opportunity. We'll see what this receiving core looks like, but they're not going to be able to get everybody they want. They have to fix the offensive line. They have to probably find a number 1 receiver. I don't think Jack Bech profiles as that, but could he be number 2 on that team, or maybe even number 3 behind Trey Tucker? I think there's a path to success for him as well. So I like the setup for Jack Bech too.
Dave, Heath,
yeah.
any sleepers?
I mean, you gave 17 of them.
Oh, just 3.
I'd say Trey Harris is my favorite.
I'm not ready to give up on Matthew Golden, and I especially like the idea of taking Matthew Golden at a lower round this year than last year. I still love the traits. He's fast. He can certainly move and make guys miss in his routes. And Jordan Love, we've seen him throw deep and throw well when he's had the opportunity to do so. That receiving core needs to thin out. And so if Romeo Doubs leaves, maybe some other changes happen. Matthew Golden gets an opportunity to step up and get more work. I know we're going to be scared to trust any Denver wide receiver, but Pat Bryant offers them a little bit something different given his size, and he's got good hands, and another guy that you can take with a late round pick. And we've already talked once on this show, and we might talk every show for at least 5 seconds about how Cleveland is a mess this offseason. I'm not sure how much they're going to add to their receiver room, given how much help they need on other parts of the team. Isaiah Bond is someone that can win downfield and have some speed to him. This is last round pick material. He's in the same range as a bunch of other second-year receivers. But if he ends up getting a lot of playing time next year, yeah, maybe he's somebody that ends up rounding out your roster and delivers a couple of decent games, because we figure Cleveland's going to have to throw a lot in their games.
Anyone left for you, Heath? You said Trey Harris.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Are we ready to write off both of the Titans receivers? I imagine Tennessee's going to add at least one. They're going to make one splash at wide receiver to try and help Cam Ward out.
They're both sleepers.
Yeah. I just don't know which one.
DK?
I mean, they're going to be behind Wan'Dale Robinson, but
well, DK had, I think, one of the highest slot percentages in the NFL last year. So if they had a slot receiver, that's bad news for Chimere DK. Io Manor, I wasn't really super impressed with him, but is DK clearly ahead of Io Manor for you guys?
Yes.
I had them both very, very close. I had DK one spot ahead.
I've got DK a spot ahead.
Okay. Did we mention Romeo Doubs is a free agent, right?
Yep.
He is.
All right, so you've got an opportunity there for Golden. What we really need to
Kraft
see
is not ready for the start of the season.
No one in the last 4 seasons for the Packers has had even 900 receiving yards. Now, part of that is injury. That the last time they had a 1,000-yard receiver was Devontae Adams. After he left, he had 1 more year with Aaron Rodgers, and then you had 3 with Jordan Love. We have not had a 900-yard receiver yet for the Packers. They've been so run-heavy the last 2 years. They can get away from that. And I think they've been bottom 5 in pass rate each of the last 2 years. They can get away from that. That could help Matthew Golden. I looked at his go route percentage. 20% of his routes are go routes. It's not that high. It's high, but it's the same as like Cortland Sutton. It's not, this guy can't be a consistent receiver because all he's doing is running downfield. That wasn't the situation at all. All right, let's go through the NFL draft then and cover any bases that we missed. So again, the first round was Travis Hunter. This is the 2025 NFL draft. Travis Hunter, Tetairoa McMillan, Emeka Egbuka, and Matthew Golden. The second round was Jaden Higgins, Luther Burden, Trey Harris, and Jack Besh. And then the third round, Kyle Williams, Isaac Tesla. I mean, at least you could say that guy's been productive when he's been on the field. I don't know if he'll get on the field more. But Kyle Williams, Tesla, Pat Bryant, Jalen Knoll for Houston, and Savion Williams for Green Bay, and Ty Felton for Minnesota. Anyone there? Kyle Williams, Isaac Tesla, Pat Bryant, Jalen Knoll, Savion Williams, Ty Felton.
So I'd love to see Tesla get the opportunity, because we've seen him just look amazing when it comes to end zone targets and being a factor there. But I don't know how that's going to come in an offense that's got St. Brown and Jamison Williams locked in the long-term contracts. Laporte is there long-term. They're all expected back healthy for this season. So it's tough with Tesla. Jalen Knoll is interesting because if the Texans move on from Christian Kirk, he's their slot receiver. There could be matchups where we will like Jalen Knoll because the opponent is bad against the slot, or they've got a slow nickel, something like that. And it leads to Knoll getting some opportunities to catch 5 passes per game, 6 passes per game. And he could be good. I don't know. He would be in that late round mix of receivers that we would take for the bench and see what happens through the first few weeks of the season, but he is talented.
I do like Higgins and Knoll. I wonder if Christian Kirk's the only thing standing in their way, though, because I do think that they expect Tank Dell to play football this year.
Right. That's
He's
thing.
expected to be pretty close to fully healthy after a year and a half removed from his major injury. So I'm not sure those guys are necessarily ahead of Tank Dell in the pecking order.
All right, let's go to round 4. Chimere Dike, Dante Thornton for the Raiders, Arian Smith for the Jets, Jalen Lane for Washington, Jalen Royals for Kansas City, Alec Iomanner for the Titans. They drafted 2 wide receivers in round 4. And Jordan Watkins for San Francisco. Chimere Dike, Dante Thornton, Arian Smith, Jalen Lane, Jalen Royals, Alec Iomanner, and Jordan Watkins.
Thornton's interesting again, just with the Raiders situation, but he's got to get on the field. He's just
all
got
of these guys are like
combo that you love.
Maybe their team doesn't add any wide receivers, and then they get a better chance.
Right. That's the Niners with Watkins.
Most of these guys, we expect them to add wide receivers.
Right.
Round 5 was Keandre Lambert-Smith for the Chargers, Torrey Horton, LeJontay Wester for Baltimore, Jimmy Horn for Carolina. And that was rounds 5 and 6. Round 7 was Tez Johnson for Tampa Bay, Ricky White for Seattle, Caden Prather for Buffalo, Kanata Mumfield for the Rams, Dominic Lovett for Detroit, and Junior Bergen for the Niners. All right. I don't think we're going to get much.
I'm glad you read those names.
Torrey Horton is one that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Yep. Lambert Smith in deeper leagues, maybe.
Do you think there's a scenario where Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are both gone from the Bucks?
No.
I don't really.
I think Godwin's contract is too prohibitive.
Yeah, Tez. I was getting at that. Tez would maybe be interesting.
Nope.
In that scenario.
Teams.
You know, I think I forgot to put these in the notes. I think I have an email to read. Isn't that exciting?
It is very.
Okay, here's a question from Nick. He says, we're done with the sophomore wide receivers, by the way. On to the emails. Fantasyfootball@cbsi.com if you want to send in your emails. Fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. That's the letter I. If Tyreek Hill signs with Kansas City, how much does Rashee Rice drop, if at all?
Not much for me.
Yeah, not much.
Rashee Rice's future is far more determined by things that have to do with him.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Okay. Will the Bears be this year's Cowboys and Bengals? High potent offense that you just want pieces of.
Yes.
Yeah, they're on that list for sure.
But the difference is the Bengals and the Cowboys defensively
right
struggle. I don't know.
I would expect Chicago's all their offseason acquisitions to be defensive focused. So there's a chance that defense gets significantly better, and that would hurt. But until that happens, there's a lot to like about the Bears.
There's Detroit's a very similar team too. You want pieces of that offense.
Yeah, but again, that's a team where their defensive splits really determine their pass attempts each of the last.
Well, I guess the question would be you're going into a draft right now. You're going to draft a lot of players from the Bears. You're going to draft a lot of players from the Lions. You're obviously drafting players from the Cowboys and the Bengals.
You're drafting at least 2, if not 3, Cowboys and Bengals, if not 4 Bengals.
You're drafting 4 Bengals. You're drafting 4 Bengals in the first 4 rounds.
Hold on. I'm not done with my sentence. You're drafting at least
long sentence.
At least 2, if not 3 Cowboys and Bengals, if not 4 Bengals before your first Bear.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest difference is that the certainty in roles in Dallas and Cincinnati are a little better than what we have in Chicago right now.
Yeah.
Those teams don't have even splits at running back. Those teams don't have as big of questions about the target distribution at wide receiver.
Depending on who you're drafting with and what kind of format you're in, I would say you're only getting 3 Bengals and 2 Cowboys.
Before your first Bear?
Yeah, you're going to draft DeAndre Swift before the quarterbacks.
Oh, I think Burrow will have a higher ADP than Swift.
Oh, I don't disagree with that. That's why I said it depends on who you're drafting with in the format.
You think Swift will be the first Bear off the board?
I think it'd be Loveland.
Him or Loveland.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other teams don't have the tight end with the big role either. So Javonte, you taking Javonte or Swift?
Right now, Javonte slightly.
And my projections, I have Swift just ahead of Javonte.
I didn't get to give this stat because I wasn't on the Monday show, but Javonte Williams just had the least efficient receiving season for a running back with 30 or more targets in at least 15 years.
Is measured by how?
Yards per target and yards per catch. It was so bad.
So we have 35 catches on 51 targets.
I don't know what it was, but his yards per catch and yards per target were so bad, and it can't be that bad again. It has to improve. I think it's actually a good sign for Javonte because you cannot be that bad in the passing game.
It fell apart in the second half because the first half of the season I think it was 24 targets in the first 8 games, 24 catches in the first 8 games on 36 targets. I think it was.
He was just better in the first half overall.
He stopped getting targeted big time. Maybe there was a reason for that. Okay. Thank you to Heath and Jamie and Dave. Thank you to all of you for watching and listening. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. We will talk to you on Monday as we talk about the sophomore tight ends. That's gonna be a good show. Our most exciting sophomore tight ends episode ever, perhaps. Looking forward to that. All right. Take care, everybody. Talk to you soon.